In this video, you're going to learn how to determine where an irrational square root is on a number line. So the first thing I would like for you to do is to complete the number line with square roots instead of their equivalent whole numbers. For example, what you're going to do is write the square root of 0 where 0 is, the square root of 1 where 1 is, the square root of 4 where 2 is, and I want you to continue the square root of 9 where 3 is. So pause the video now and complete that line. So hopefully you are getting to a point where those become much easier to do without looking any of them up. Now we're going to take a look at the square root of 20, and where would that be on this number line? So as long as you know the perfect squares, you can see that the square root of 20 will have to be between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25, which means that it has to be somewhere in here on the number line. So we're going to say it's going to be between 4 and 5. And that is because the square root of 16 is less than the square root of 20, but the square root of 20 is less than the square root of 25. So that's basically saying that 4 is less than the square root of 20, which is less than the square root of 25, which is 5. So I'm going to put 5 there. All right. Now let's talk about which one it's closer to. So since 20 is only 4 away from 16, but 20 is 5 away from 25, that means that the square root of 20 is closer to the square root of 16. So that means it's closer to 4. Again, that's because the square root of 20 is closer to the square root of 16 than it is to 25, the square root of 25. All right, now let's take a look at example 2. And this is just practicing on your calculator and making sure you can round properly. We discussed how to do this in our calculators already in class, so this is just a practice problem for you to do. When you type that into your calculator, you should get 8.48528, and it continues along the calculator. So if we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to look at my hundredth spot, which is the 8. Since the next number is 5 or more, that makes the 8 become a 9, and all these other numbers after it go away when we round. So my final answer is approximately 8.49. Example 3 is talking about the diagonal of a square. So I'm going to draw a square out, and we are talking about the diagonal of the square. So we're talking about the length of this part here. That's the diagonal. And we have a formula given, and it says that in the formula S is the side length. So what we're going to do is we're going to put S, the side length, that value goes in for the S. So we're going to plug 18 in for S. And then we're going to follow the order of operations. So we're going to have d equals the square root of 2 times 18 squared. Now the order of operations tells us we should do parentheses and then exponents. So remember in class I talked about the long bar above here means that there are really parentheses down here. So we're going to do 2 times 18 squared. So we have to do the 18 squared first. So my diagonal is going to equal the square root of 2 times 324. I still have to figure out underneath the radical first. So that's going to be the square root of 648. I'm going to plug that into my calculator. You should do that right now. Plug it in. See if you're getting the same answer I do. I got 25.4558, and then it kept going. So this is an irrational number. We're going to round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to have a look at the 4. That's what I'm rounding to. Since the next number is 5 or more, that bumps this 4 up to a 5. So that means my final answer is going to be approximately 25.5 centimeters. So when the side length of this square is 18 centimeters, then the diagonal is going to be about 25.5 centimeters. And that's the length of the diagonal going across. The next problem talks about the area of a square carpet. So I'm going to draw a square, and the area is the inside of the square. So the area, they say, is 150 square feet. And a square has equal sides. So if this side is x, then this side is x. And to get area, we multiply x times itself. So we do x squared. And that should give us the area of 150. Now, to get the x by itself, I need to take the square root of both sides. So when I do that, I'm going to type into my calculator the square root of 150. Please type that into your calculator right now. Make sure you're getting the same answer I do. So I'm getting x is about 12.2474, etc. So let's go ahead and round to the nearest tenth again. Here's my tenths. That is less than 5, so that means the 2 stays as a 2, but we don't put any of the numbers afterwards when we round. So to the nearest tenth, the side length of this square is 12.2, and the answer is in feet. In this last example, Mrs. Adesso's square bulletin board, so we're going to start again with a square, covers 12 square feet, so the inside is 12. And we don't know the outside. So we're going to start the same way we did example 4. X squared, but this time it's equal to 12 because that's the area. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides to get rid of that square. Those are inverse operations. So when I do that, I get x is equal to the square root of 12, and I plug that into my calculator. Please plug that in. You're getting approximately 3.464, etc. So that is an irrational number, but now we need to make sure that we read this. It says she needs border that goes around the entire bulletin board. So what we figured out is that this side is about 3.464, and this side down here is about 3.464, which means this side is about 3.464, and the top is about 3.464. So I could add up all the sides, or I could just take this answer, multiply it by 4, and that will give me a good amount of border. So when I multiply, I get 13.856 in my calculator. And that's if you don't round this, if you just keep this number as it is in your calculator and just hit times 4, you get that number. So if I'm going to the store and buying border for my bulletin board, I would want to buy probably 14 feet of border. So I'm going to say my answer is 14 feet of border. And that is the end of your video.